I gotta give a shout out to Uncle Vu, the real story behind Royal Dahl's Black Charlie. Last week, Royal Dahl, I think that's how you say his name, I can't say it. Widow Felicity Dahl told the BBC that the children's author had written an early draft of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Oh, hold on a second. Uh, in which Charlie Bucket was black. Mrs. Dahl called it a shame that his agent persuaded her husband to make Charlie white, but what was in the draft called Charlie's Chocolate Boy. Catherine Kaiser, an associate professor of English at the University of South Carolina who has written about Charlie's Chocolate Boy, spoke with Maria Russo about the discarded version of the classic story. Give a brief rundown of the plot of Charlie's Chocolate Boy. Setup is similar to Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. There's this magical chocolate factory, and its owner, Willie Wonka, is being inundated by children who want to visit. So he decides instead of letting hundreds of children in, he'll give 7 golden tickets. Talk about marketing, right? You want to increase your sales? Get that money back for those 7 tickets faster and easier and cheaper than he can by allowing people in. Anyways, there are 2 more children. So, oh, so that's more or less the same. There are 2 more children, and some of the names are different. Augustus Gloop was Augustus Pottle. The names are fantastic. There's Versa Salt, but also Marvin Prune and Miranda Piker, and of course Charlie Bucket, who in this version is a black boy and is accompanied by his 2 Dothan parents. All the others are white? Yes. So Charlie ends up in the Easter room where there are life-size candy molds of creatures, and one of these life-size molds is shaped like a chocolate boy. Charlie is fascinated by this. Wonka helps him into the mold and gets distracted. The mold closes and the chocolate pours over his body, and he is suffocated, nearly drowning in it, and it hardens around him, which feels terrible. He's trapped. He's alive, but he can't be seen or heard. No one knows where he's gone. Then he gets taken to Wonka's house to beat the chocolate boy and Wonka's son's Easter basket. Charlie is waiting in the mold to be cracked open the next day when the son will get his Easter treat. That's when burglars come into the house and to steal millions of dollars in jewelry. Charlie has witnessed this, and there are tiny eye holes in the chocolate, but they never realized the chocolate boy was alive. So he groans and alerts Wonka and his wife. Wonka has a wife. That's a huge change in the published version. Wonka is, of course, single in that, and Charlie becomes his heir. In this original manuscript, he does not become his heir because Wonka already has a son, so Black Charlie is not invited to be part of the family. The big reward is that Wonka gives Charlie Bucket a store in the city center. He names it Charlie's Chocolate Shop. And the happy ever after is that now Charlie owns this store, and his friends can eat whatever they want there. When you started your research, had anyone else ever written about Charlie Chocolate Boy? No, it was mentioned by Dahl's biographer, Donald Sturrock, and it was mentioned in Lucy Madigan's popular book Inside Charlie's Chocolate Factory, but had never been looked at in great textual detail. Dahl has a reputation of being very offensive at times when it comes to race. How do you think this version would have changed the way we view race in his books? As far as this version goes, I think it's really powerful racial allegory that might seem very surprising come from Dahl. I think the mold in the shape of a chocolate boy is a metaphor for racial stereotype. In the early 20th century, chocolate marketing in both the US and England was very tied up in imperialist fantasies and in connecting brown skin with brown chocolate. In one British ad for chocolate, for example, you had a black figure holding a cocoa bean, and happily bestowing it on white children. Cacao, pardon me. So I think it's neat that in this mid-century moment, Dahl has this black boy get stuck inside a mold that fits him perfectly. He emphasizes that everything about the mold fits, except once the chocolate inside the mold hardens, it's uncomfortable. So what better symbol of what it's like to be turned into a racial stereotype than a black boy who gets stuck inside a life-size chocolate mold and can't be seen or heard through this chocolate coating? So you're saying this draft was anti-racist, but then in the published book, the Oompa Loompas appear, which made it into one of the most racially stereotyping books of its era. Right, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is published in the United States in 1964 amid the civil rights movement in the U.S. and race rights in England. Dahl should have been aware that the happy slave was not a permissible stereotype. And yet, in the original edition, Oompa Loompas were a tribe of African pygmies. I think this arc, from what I find to be fairly anti-racist novel to the novel that has been rightly criticized for its racist and imperialist politics, what it really shows is Dahl's uh, ambivalence. I think we're right. We're in the right culturally. I think we're in the right cultural movement to understand that. Like Claudia Rankine, Rankine has said, we need to understand how white people imagine race. So I think it's really telling that Dahl seems to identify with this vulnerable character. I mean, he himself was a son of a Norwegian immigrant and was bullied at British boarding schools. I think Dahl always felt like an outsider who was bullied into Britishness. Yet he was someone often accused of anti-Semitic nastiness and worse. Yes, I think that's power of racism to make someone able to hold this contradictory views at once, to both identify with the underdog and seem to understand the pain of the stereotype, but then to be completely flummoxed. Man, that anyone finds the Oompa Loompas offensive. He was generally surprised and very annoyed. So I don't mean for this to whitewash Dahl's racial politics. I just really love the vulnerability and potential in this draft, in this first draft. Why did he change the story and make Charlie white? He sent it to his literary agent and friend, Sheila St. Lawrence, and she immediately wrote back, please don't make Charlie black. The depressing thing about uh, all of this is that the whole message of Charlie's Chocolate Boy seems to be how painful what it is for a black person to be reduced to an object and treated with violence, and then the Oompa Loompas are all objects. Wonka tests his candles on them as though they were expendable. It's almost as if he transferred the original Charlie's blackness onto Oompa Loompas to much worse effect. That's the other thing about this book. It ends up being about the virtuous white factory boy. Isn't that where we've ended up now as a society? We hear so much about the virtuous white workers, and it often seems to be taking black people out of the story. Charlie and the Oompa Loompas are very similar, both starving. All the other children are bad consumers because they eat without pleasure. So it's really um, interesting to think about this book's trajectory. Charlie becomes white and he ultimately ascends in the great glass elevator. Friggin', yeah, I guess glass ceiling. The best metaphor for white privilege I've ever seen. And all the Oompa Loompas are back in the factory serving Wonka. So, yeah, when was this? 3 years ago. Very, very freaking impressive. And thanks, Uncle Vu, to for sharing this uh, tidbit with me. I mean, you didn't share this link, but hey. Oh, and by the way, check out Uncle Vu Toys. He's he's got some good stuff, and he will be he will be making a an extreme debut here soon. So just get on that ball, and just remember, Matthew sent you to Uncle Vu.